Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, Middlekauff mailbag. You guys know the drill. At John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs to get your question answered here on the show. We will start with Colby Brown. 595 followers, by the way. Not bad, young man. Looks like a firefighter. Mailbag. Everyone acts like the Bears fleeced the Panthers with the trade last year. I agree, and it looks like a landslide, especially with how Young played last season. But I believe we still need to consider the fact they passed on CJ Stroud. Would you take Stroud over Caleb Williams? I would take CJ Stroud. So you're saying that the Bears passed on CJ Stroud being number one? I think I would rather have, like, if today, would you take CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams May 13th, 2024? You would, if you were in the NFL, you would have to take CJ Stroud. He has a year body of work. No one can debate that, right? You would have to take CJ Stroud. And I'm high on Caleb Williams. I think if you told me today I could have everything the Bears got, DJ Moore, just the picks, and Caleb Williams, I think you would have to take that. Because it's not Caleb for CJ Stroud. It's Caleb plus DJ Moore, plus they sucked another year with Justin Fields, which led to Rome Odunze, right? So there's other stuff that comes along with it. I think in a vacuum, player for player, you would take CJ Stroud today. But when you factor in the package, I would take the risk of Caleb and everything else. Still could be wrong, but I think you would have to, because it was a lot. I mean, they also have their second round pick next year. So what if the Panthers suck again? What if that pick is 37? So it's Caleb, DJ Moore, a second. I mean, that's a lot, man. I think you got to. I hear what you're saying, and you're not wrong. But it's not player for player. It's the entire trade. And I think when you factor in the entire trade, kind of a no-brainer. Love the show. Appreciate you. Trent. My question for the mailbag is, as someone who worked under him for years, what do you believe separates Howie as one of the best GMs in the league? What are some of his unique philosophies he has? Well, I think one of the most powerful things you can have in that position is information, is be an information gatherer on pro guys, on college players, and on the coaching world. And I think nobody uses information better. And Howie is what I would consider an intellect. He's very bright. So his ability to make these trades on draft night, he can just operate on his feet better than, I would just say, quote unquote, some football guys. So his intellectual capacity, just in terms of maneuverability and understanding the cap, because that's where he started, is just far superior than everyone else. So he watches tape, and he's been doing it now for 20 plus years. I don't think anyone's going to, consider him Bill Polian, right? Or someone like that, but he knows what's good and what's bad. And his ability to understand contracts and the value of contracts and then work trades either on the draft or not on the draft is clearly second to none. So I remember getting there, and I was essentially like his personnel assistant and being overwhelmed because he was kind of all over the map because his brain fires like all of ours do that have like ADHD here. And it was hard to keep up on everything. Within a year, you kind of get a hold of, you just got to be prepared for anything. But I think he's done a very, very good job over the years of hiring. I mean, they have a really good scouting staff. And he has guys. I mean, now he's had Alan Walking forever, who I consider a friend and who's really good at his job. He hired Joe Douglas away. I mean, when I was there, we had Veach, Louis Riddick, Phil Savage. We had a lot of people. He just always has like, and part of this is Jeffrey giving him the budget, to hire high end scouts. He works closely with those guys. He works with a contract. I would also say his capacity to follow everything is pretty impressive. It's really, really difficult. I think, most people just believe that everyone in the NFL kind of knows everything. A lot of college scouts have no clue what guys in the NFL look like on tape. Like they're not constantly watching college tape, right? Just like a lot of pro guys aren't super dialed in 24/7 to the college game. There is a small percentage, I would say, of guys that are all over it all the time. What's playing in both. And then understanding the value, because his job isn't just to get the player right, it's to know the value of those guys. And I think Howie's elite at that because he looks at it from, I would say, much more of analytical is the wrong way to put it, but an unemotional, like, this is the value on the guy. This is what we're willing to pay. This is when, and the other thing he's got that you have to have in the NFL when it comes to players and he can be very cutthroat and just move off a guy and pivot on a guy. And I think as he's gotten older, when I since then, obviously he's got very close emotional ties to their core group of guys, over the years. Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, because he spent so much time around those guys. And I think the one thing he's really, really good at, because the Eagles have been good at this for a long time, is knowing what high end guys look like. And then I think a characteristic that he balances pretty well is the character stuff of valuing character. And I think they do a good job of that now. I mean, look at the two guys they took. But also knowing that, like, to win in the NFL, you got to take some chances. And sometimes you got to put your balls on the table, like he did with Jalen Carter. And let's face it, like some of the GMs in the league, which I don't blame them. Like, I don't blame Atlanta or Detroit. Like, it was pretty risky, but maybe Atlanta would have benefited from taking him over Bijan Robinson, but they didn't do it, and Howie's team was much more equipped to handle him because of the Georgia guys. I also think he'll change. He's smart people change, right? Like philosophically, when it comes to business, you have a belief and then the world changes and you got to pivot. If you don't, you're going to get lapped and you're going to be one of those people in 5 or 10 years complaining about it. I've always thought, like, my moral compass and what I believe in, like when it comes to society, honestly hasn't really changed in 30 years. Like how to treat people, how to act, when it comes to dealing with older people, when it comes to dealing with people professionally. Like, I've kind of been taught that by my parents since I was, I don't know, 10, 15 years old. But when it comes to the way I look at money and the industry I'm in, constantly changes and it constantly adapts. And I think anyone professionally has to be willing to do that. And I think no one is better than pivoting when they have to pivot than Howie. Now, he's intense. He's on. He'd be the first to tell you that all the time. Like, he is not some guy chilling with his feet up fucking around. Like, it's an intense environment, which is very, I would say, symbolic of the city he's in. It's not an easy place to work. Even when I would say even more so when they're having success. He's an intense guy. And it was an incredible experience for me just to see something that I never would have got to see in terms of being around someone who is, I would say, is driven, intellectually driven, and thinks just kind of differently than everyone else. But also, it's football. So, I mean, how different can you be? Like, everyone wants good players. But there's no like, hey, we're cool now. We're good. Roster's good. Like the Eagles today. You look at their roster, it's pretty good. I'll promise you internally, they're not just hanging out like, we're set. Let's just kind of mail it in until summer break. Like, no, it is a high stress environment. Once I left the Eagles, it's like, fuck, I can do anything. I mean, put me in the boiler room. I'll be good to go. Where's Ben Affleck? I'm ready to rock. The NBA playoffs are heating up, and so is the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. With NIL deals becoming the next method of recruiting players, do you think the once upon a time colleges will start to compete again for national championships or even make it into the playoffs? Think of Nebraska, who has big time money and a massive following, but hasn't had success in 20 plus years. They did go to the conference championship in Ndamukong Suh's year. Back in the 90s, Nebraska was always the top program and even received back-to-back national championships. Could NIL bring them back to obscurity? Well, I think a program like that, let's use them as an example, because obviously you did. They're in the Big Ten. So they're competing against, you could argue that Ohio State, I guess Texas, maybe A&M, but Ohio State can compete with anyone financially. I think they cut $10 million worth of checks to get the top transfer guys this offseason. So that's like the equivalent of going up against like Apple or Google. So like they have more money than you. And because of their success, they're unwilling, or they're not unwilling to like, they don't even ask questions. Like, you need this guy? Let's do it. You need this coach? Let's do it. You need this player? How much does he cost? And then you get Michigan now with their most recent success. They're even going to be more aggressive. You add Oregon, who has a massive war chest of money. USC, same thing. How can you compete against them? Well, the only way, because you're not going to be able to buy players like them consistently. I know you got Riola, and reports are that you gave him millions of dollars. His dad played there. Like, if Riola's dad had played at Florida or at Utah or at Oregon, would he be at Nebraska? Probably not. Someone else, they would have accepted someone else's money. And I don't blame them for being aggressive with a guy just because they had a connection. But on the whole, you're not going to get that level of talent. So you need to shorten the gap with the coach. The reason Utah, these last like 5 years, has been so freaking competitive, they're not going to have the NIL money of USC, Oregon, or Washington. They're just not. But their coach is elite. So if Matt Rule is a high-end college football coach, you can make the playoffs. And if Riola hits. If Riola hits and Rule is everything we build him to be as a college coach, you're going to be good. I don't think you're going to be Ohio State, LSU, Bama, Georgia. What Texas is going to benefit the most from this money. Oregon. But can you be like the 9th seed and win a playoff game, which would be a massive, massive success? Hell yeah. I grew up on Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips. Those teams, those late, like 95, 96 Nebraska teams. The shit. Huge Chiefs fan here. And Rashee Rice news has been a huge kick in the you-know-what to this offseason. I know you can't monitor their players 24/7, but what can teams do to try and make sure this stuff doesn't happen? Is there some kind of mentoring or advisement teams offer, especially with these young guys who become rich very quickly? These teams invest so much money, and the league as a whole, to mentor, to talk to these players. Think about the money the Chiefs have invested in guys like Mahomes and Kelsey and Justin Reed and those type guys on their team that are around these type guys every day during the season, telling them how to act, what to do right, how to be a pro, what to avoid. Eventually, in the real world, you can't hold everyone's hand. And once the offseason starts, because of the CBA agreement, he's free to do whatever the fuck he wants. So you don't think that the team, the players, like, they talk about this stuff nonstop. But once it's February, March, April, May, until voluntary OTAs. Now, Rice can come back. I think the Chiefs told him not to come back, to get his stuff in order. But like, what could they have done when he's got 7, 8 buddies? They're all drunk and high, and they're renting Lamborghinis. Like, he has the funds to do that. It's a maturity thing. Now, they also know what they were getting when they drafted the guy. He had red flags coming out of college. Obviously, when he's around the team, no issues. And in college, you're around the team 11 and a half months a year. You're never out of their sight. In the pros, you're not. This is the big leagues. You're grown up with lots of money now. So you either understand the opportunity you have or you potentially throw it away like it looks like this guy's doing. Because he has the incident where he leaves the scene, which it doesn't take, a rocket scientist to figure out, why do you think he left the scene? Why do you think? It's not very hard to figure out, which for his sake, probably in a weird way, thank God no one got injured, right thing to do, because it would have been way worse. And then this issue with hitting someone at a club, like, it does show you when you deal with immature individuals. I hate telling like, you shouldn't be partying, you shouldn't be this. Do whatever the hell you want to do. This is America. I've never been into telling others what to do at any point in time in my adult life. But like, once you get in trouble with the hit and run situation, shouldn't you probably lay low? I'm not saying you can't hang out with some buddies. Should he be at the club? Because let's face it, once you start consistently going out after that incident, you become even more of a target. And for you to have an altercation after that situation, like, there's a line of, immaturity, got some stuff to work on, and you're just a fucking moron. And you're becoming a major headache. The problem is, in pro sports, he is talented. And when your talent outweighs your problems, you figure out ways to get around it. You could argue at this point in time, his talent and his problems are starting to see eye to eye. Not like this guy's Jerry Rice or Randy Moss. Ain't Tyreek Hill. Good young player. Winning player. But those two incidents in a short period of time for a team that plans on winning the Super Bowl every year, full of high character superstars, I just think you get to a point like you just can't hold their hand. You can't mandate that they stay in Kansas City. Can't mandate it. This is a business. Like, there are unions involved. And here's the thing. Most guys can handle themselves. And listen, we're all going to make a mistake as a young person if we got a lot of money and we're drinking. Like, yeah, you're going to do some things you regret. But there's a fine line of, I wish I could have the last night back and the things that he's doing. But there's only so much Andy Reid and the Chiefs can do. I'm a Bears fan living in the Carolinas, creating quite an interesting dynamic these days. When I hit up local sports bars, haven't heard you address the Fields at kick returner rumors. I still root for Fields from afar for the remainder of his career. Is there any legitimacy to the dynamic ball-carrying quarterbacks frequently serving the returner role given the newly approved kickoff formation? I talked about it yesterday on the mailbag. I saw Sean Payton discussing how explosive this new kickoff rule is going to be. Like, there are going to be fireworks. There are going to be a lot of touchdowns. And if you just think at it from a basic football standpoint, like, why do most runs not go for 50, 60, 70 yards? It's really twofold. Most running backs don't have elite high-end speed, so they can't run away from people like a Tyreek Hill. But you also have defenders on every level. And unlike a pass, where if I throw a go route, if he doesn't have safety help, it's basically a one-on-one situation. If that guy falls, if that guy misjudges his jump, whatever, it's very easy for big explosive plays to happen on pass plays. In the run game, there's a reason an 8 or 10-yard run is considered a long run. Because you have to go by two levels of the defense. You have the defensive line, the line of scrimmage, and then you have 2 to 3.5, depending on how you play the safety, linebackers. And you got to get by those guys for the defensive guys, a safety or a corner, to make the tackle. And for you to have a long run, you basically, now it might be to a left or a right, so you're not taking out, running by the entire team, but you're running by a lot of guys. They're getting blocked. You're avoiding them. This new kickoff return, if you hit a hole, you're like, once you get past the defensive guys, you're gone. I wonder if some of these teams, the guys are all lined up on whatever the yard line is, 5 yards apart. If you wouldn't have two or three guys immediately drop back, basically turn into like a safety and backpedal. So if there is a situation where the guy breaks out, because if he misses the first line of defense, if everyone's going forward, he's gone. So when that rumor about Justin Fields, it wasn't a rumor. Jalen Warren said it on Cam Hayward's podcast. Multiple time guest of this show. Cam Hayward, that is. Walter Payton, Man of the Year. So they brought it up. And I thought, well, it sounds a little crazy, but when you factor in Fields' skill set, elite speed in the open field, well, what if he misses that first line of defense? He'd be gone. Kicker ain't making that tackle in the open field. So I do wonder if there's a little validity to it. Now, there's the element of he's your backup quarterback. If Russell got hurt, what if he got hurt on that play? So I'm not expecting it. And isn't Cordell Patterson now on the Steelers? But that play is going to be fascinating. We're going to get legit fireworks. Was wondering if you've ever watched Australian football, AFL, before. Love to hear your take. I have not. Is that considered rugby or is that considered football? Or is that soccer? I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I have not. Going to want to get it on the mailbag. Love the pod, especially random moments of life advice. And my question is going to be about today. I'm 23, just graduated college in December, and currently making about $40,000 a year in my lab position. I don't have any real responsibilities yet, beyond rent and my pets. The job is cool and holds me over, but beyond money, I feel really no purpose in trying to move up in this field. I've started making food content recently, and I'm starting to get a bit of traction there. What's a good point to dive headfirst into the passionate work and throw the responsible moves out the window? Also bring back, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies. I would say you're 23 years old. So your food content, I'm just going to assume, even if you're getting traction in terms of people watching, if you're not making any money on that, it would be hard to just go all in on that immediately. Like, you do need to pay for rent. I would try to find a way with your current job to spend even more time doing what you're doing, which might entail some sacrifice. Doing it at night, doing it on the weekends, and over a 12-month period, see if you can build it up where it's like, yeah, I might be able to make some money on doing this before you just jump in. So basically treat like you have two jobs, which is a lot of time. But if you just quit your job and do this, it can be discouraging if you're not making any money. Then all of a sudden you're in a position where your back's against the wall. So can you do the job you're doing if you're going through the motions and just work on your other kind of side project in your head the majority of time? And when you're at home or on the weekends or whenever your free time is, just double down on that. And then the moment that, if you're able to generate enough money where it's like, I might be able to at least just survive off this, quit the other job and go all in. But now you could just jump into the deep end, just quit and put all your chips on the table. But you could be in a position where if you don't have any help from anybody, you can't pay rent or don't have any food. So if you just need to survive in the short term, use the job you currently have to survive and put all your effort and energy into, your passion. Because I was actually at dinner with some of my girl's friends, and this one girl who just crushes it, I guess. I mean, makes hundreds of thousands of dollars at her job. She's kind of bored, doesn't even like it. But she's good at it, and she makes a lot of money. But her passion is something else. And all throughout dinner, she kept talking about what she loves to do, which she was a big foodie and she wanted to open a restaurant, and she's just so into it. And I kind of said it, but also it's not really my place. I don't know these people. Like, why don't you just do it? And she was in a position where she had enough saved, like she could easily just go all in. And you get to a point, and this girl's probably in her early 30s. You start making enough money in a profession that you don't care about that much. They kind of get you with I don't know if it's quite golden handcuffs because she's not making millions, but she's making enough where it's hard to leave that job. And then all of a sudden, she could go another 10, 20 years and never make that plunge. And all of a sudden, the thing she loves most, she never tried. Where she's in the position now, like you could kind of do it right now. And I just see some of these people that get too far past and never give what they really wanted to do a try. And I've been very fortunate that I just did it from the jump, right? But I didn't make any money. I made none in my 20s, enough to survive, eat, but I never made more than $50,000 before I was 30 years old. Some years wasn't even close. And the equivalent of that would probably be like 60, 70 now, in bigger cities where you barely heads above water. Now I was single, didn't have any responsibilities, but I didn't have any other options because I knew that one, I don't have the energy to do something I don't like. And I knew that really early on in life. It's probably one of my greatest qualities. When I don't have any energy to do it, I don't care how much, like I just won't be interested and I just won't pay attention. I actually knew that from school. Like I never paid attention in school. It bored me. So it's why my advice always is when you like something and are passionate about it, it's so much easier to work. It's what I was thinking when she was talking about how she was hesitant to make the plunge. I'm like, you don't understand. It'll be so much easier for you to work a 70, 80-hour week doing what you love because it won't feel like work. Now, eventually, I always say work, no matter how much you love it, feels like work because it just becomes part of your routine. But early on, when you have to grind the hardest, it's easier to go above and beyond for less money when you love what you're doing. And I think it gets very, very difficult for people to transition because the longer you go, maybe the more money you get, the more responsibilities you have. You get married, you have children, you buy a house, it's harder to pivot. And most people are not just like freewheeling unscared when it comes to certain things. The majority of people are hesitant. So you gotta, it's why any young person that hits me, and I've tried to respond to a lot of you guys, it's so much easier to try things and take big swings and do things that you like doing when you're young. Because if you want to make the transition as you get older, it's very, very hard to pivot. When you got 2 kids and you're dependent on the money and your mortgage is kind of big and you got a country club membership or you got a couple car payments or whatever's going on. You want to send your kids to private school, like real life responsibility. I want to apologize for the long-winded DM. I also have 2 questions I would like to run by you. I've been a listener to Colin for years and I've enjoyed hearing your appearances. When I stumbled upon your podcast, I instantly fell in love. Oh, okay. Don't want to just read this by myself. Anyway, here's my question. I'm from the Bay Area in Northern California. Grew up a Niner fan, but fell in love with Alex Smith's quarterback skills, and I followed him to the Chiefs. And I have been a Chiefs fan ever since. At first, I was excited about the Xavier Worthy pick. But after listening to various sports shows, I'm hearing he has struggled with drops. I think he broke his hand. So he played through like the injury. After last year's struggles with the wide receiver room of dropping balls, should we be concerned about this being an issue, Worthy, or do you believe Andy will be able to fix it? I heard someone say his drop rate relative to the other receivers was actually one of the best. I would not be that worried. I think they feel pretty confident. I know for a fact because I was texting the room after they took it. I think they like this guy a lot. And they see a similar skill set, not in Tyreek, but in Deshaun. So I would be excited. I began playing golf with my dad a few years ago. We now play golf every week together, sometimes multiple times a week if we can. Sounds like you two are living well. I recently have been struggling with making consistent good contact with my driver off the tee. I've been playing with the idea of entering a local tournament, but I won't feel confident until I get this part of my game fixed. Do you have any tips or suggestions for making constant good contact? If I knew how to make consistent good contact with the driver, I would retire from this podcast, start a YouTube channel, and be a multimillionaire. So no, I think welcome to golf. It's by far uh, something every human being, even the pros, all have in common: struggling off the tee. Now, luckily, with equipment, modern day equipment, it's never been easier when you hit it well. But let's face it, we all want to swing a little harder with our driver. Then all of a sudden, you're in a bush with 3 rattlesnakes and a tree's hanging over you. It's like, good luck getting out of there. Big fan. Question: does Tua stare down his primary target the worst you have ever seen? Surprised he doesn't have more interceptions. Well, they have pretty elite receivers. I mean, Tyreek's, one of the greatest receivers I've ever seen in my NFL watching life for 30 plus years. And Waddle's a young star. So, and their offensive coordinator's elite. I think Tua's downfall, honestly, is pretty simple. He has an average arm. He's a warm weather quarterback. He's just going to struggle in the cold. And he's not very mobile. So he's a small pocket quarterback who's not a very good athlete relative to NFL quarterbacks. He's much closer to like Jared Goff movement-wise than he is Mahomes. But Jared Goff's got him by several inches and can see over the offensive line. Like, it's kind of short. I feel like I'm a hater. Like, I like the guy. I admire him as a person. Just when it comes to paying quarterbacks top dollars, I couldn't do it. But it's like, I'm not rooting against the guy. I just think his skill set in that conference in cold weather cities, which the AFC is full of, Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Buffalo. I mean, how the fuck you beating those teams? Hint, you're not. Okay, we'll end on this. Mailbag. The physicality comparison for the NBA and NFL is like boxing and UFC. Once a boxer gets smacked with a leg kick, they will crumble and start crying immediately because they are just not hit like that, not calloused up like that. When an NBA player gets hit sticked in the middle of the field, they will walk out of the stadium, not even the sideline, far away from the action if they could even walk. The dumbest part about the argument is no one with a brain would argue that they don't have NFL athletes. Or if guys just quit playing basketball tomorrow, a large percentage of the league, NFL teams wouldn't work out. And there would be some NFL teams would immediately sign. If Zion Williamson just said, I'm done with the NBA, I quit, I want to play football, every team in the league would try to sign Zion to like the equivalent of a future practice squad bare minimum contract. And then he would eventually have to play football. He has the athleticism and the strength and the explosion, but could he play? Tyrese Maxey. I mean, you go around the league, there are a lot. Could they play every single day in practice, let alone the games? Football, this is not basketball. You don't just play games. Like, LeBron's teams, they don't practice. They just hoop. Baseball, you just show up and play it every day. The NFL is the opposite. Monday, come in for film, get a workout, get your rehab. Tuesday, off day. Wednesday, show up, team meeting, 7:45 or 8. Then to meetings, then to walkthrough, then to lunch, then to practice. Maybe you practice in the morning. These are pads. Thursday, you do it again. Friday, you do it again. Saturday, if it's on the road, show up early, breakfast, meetings, walkthrough, playing. Get there, meetings, walkthrough, meetings, night, wake up, go play. You play once a week. So I just think the mentality of basketball guys, it's impossible to even, you don't just get to show up and play like in basketball or baseball. That's not how it works. You basically practice all off season, then all training camp to just get ready for week 1. Spring training. They have like 3 days of practice and they start playing games. They basically play games for 9 months or 8 months or whatever. Basketball, same thing. Couple practices, then you start playing games and you're just off. Football's all about practice. And then, like you said, the physicality. You can say, oh, the game's, it's way different than the 80s and the 70s. Well, yeah, it is. Have Fred Warner hit you. Have Myles Garrett hit you. Have Jalen Ramsey tackle you in the open field. Have Jalen Carter chase you down. See how that feels. That's one play. Got 50 more. Buckle up. Yeah, it's not as simple as like, yeah, they can just play. It's not how football works. It's by far the most complex game. Let's face it, basketball's not that complex. Neither is baseball relative to football, which is all about practice, put in plays. I'm not even factoring in. Then you got to mentally and physically be able to handle it. In basketball, like, do we run pick and rolls or we run motions? Where's my screen coming? Football, there's like 7 checks at the line of scrimmage in the NFL. Could they even handle it? Some of these guys would be overwhelmed. Football guys are overwhelmed. It was an exhausting conversation. Appreciate everyone listening.